Pourquoi ce film cette année?
Why this film this year in 2010? Well, I told myself that since the 50th year anniversary of Mali coincided with 2010, since most French-speaking African countries got their independence in 1960, so I told myself that the fact that this important milestone coincided with another 50th year anniversary, namely the 50th year anniversary of the school founded by Nambala Keita in Nana Kenieba. So I told myself that this was the opportunity for me to critically look at the independence of Mali and its 50th year anniversary, and to do a critical evaluation of the Malian educational system 50 years after Mali's independence. The thing is that I myself did not know my father very well, because when you arrived in Joliba, I had already left. I was already in school in Bamako. So for some reasons that were related to an internal dynamics in the village between the civil servants living in the village, so my family sent me to Bamako to school. I was about 12 or 13. So since that time, I have not really spent lengthy stays with my family. So from there, I went to high school, and then Belgium, and then the United States. So I have not really gotten a chance to know my father very well. So I really appreciated my father only at his death. I'm sorry to say that, but you know, it's only on that day that I began to really understand. And I was very lucky to have been there, because if somebody was going to miss his father's funeral, it was going to be me. But I was there that day. And it is that day that I really began to get a full understanding of what my father was. And through testimonials like yours and testimonials of people who had come that day to share my family's pain.
Après moi, chacun est ce que je dois prendre. Bon, c'est un souvenir du coup, hein, vous allez partir chez maman là.
My father said, this video is a little souvenir from me that you can take with you, souvenir from old veteran Nambala Keita, who fought from 1939 to 1945 for the French army. It had been about 10 years that I've been working on a South African educator by the name of John Dube, who was a pioneer in the education of his country, because he had founded a school in 1900, a school which played a very important role in the history of South Africa, particularly in the intellectual history of South Africa. So I told myself that the time was ripe for me to try to understand my own father's work, the work he had done 50 years ago in Mali, in Nana Kenieba, by founding a school with his own money in his own village. So the sign you see here says Ministry of National Education, School Nambala Keita, so first and second levels. This school that has 9 grades, this school bears the name of my father, Nambala Keita, his founder. The man who founded it in 1960, this school opened its doors 2 or 3 weeks after Mali's independence. It was the first school of this kind to have been built by somebody with his own money, by somebody who had never been to school himself. So the government of Mali, precisely the Ministry of National Education, thought that the best way to immortalize this man was to give his name to the school, because this school was the foundation of a whole development, an endogenous development, which is the type of development that the impulse of which comes from the natives of the village itself. So that's why this is exactly what the government of Mali is trying to do today through decentralization. So in fact, what Nambala did, he did the work of the government 30 or 40 years before by building the school. he had already translated into acts, you know, the policy of the government, which later became the policy of the government. So he not only did that, he also generated among the natives of the village a true love for their home village. This is what you call endogenous development, and it's the best development because you cannot develop a country by imposing outside molds on it. So exogenous development has proven to be not useful. So my father already, before independence, had understood that a village or a country can only be developed through the love of his and the work of his own natives. The school was the foundation of that development. Everything that came later started from here.
Un des grands problèmes de
Biggest problems of Nana Kenieba was his isolation and his remoteness. And my father realized that very early, because when he started going there, traveling there on bicycle, sometimes 80 kilometers, and sometimes he would reach some villages where there was no passage. His concern was to make sure that the village was accessible 12 months out of 12. Because practically in the rainy season in the past, the village was cut off from everything. So in the 60s, in the 70s, he managed, with the help of my uncle, who was a businessman in the Ivory Coast, to create a bridge. This first bridge, which made sure that the village was accessible to the rest of the world, and that was very, very important, first for the access to education, but also even for the local produce to reach the markets in Bamako.
Dans les années 50 et 60,
in the 60s and the 50s and 60s in Nana Kenieba, the great problem was river blindness. It was very rare to see people, very difficult to see people who were 50 years old who still had their eyesight because of the water and the shallow water that people used to drink, because when they went to the hamlets to farm, that's all the water they could get. Even in the village, the wells were not deep enough, so the water was infected with the germs of sleeping sickness or river blindness. So his concern, my father's concern, was to make sure that one day they would have clean water. And in the 90s, through the help of the people of Thionville, the village was able to have its first deep well, and with a pump. So the day the water gushed out of the pump, my father said, finally happiness has arrived in the village. Finally happiness has arrived. Lately, I've thought about my own life, my own trajectory in life, and I realized I owe a lot, and I owe everything to my father, and particularly to his commitment to education. And one of the salient facts of my father's life is that he himself lost his own father at a very young age. So he was always grateful to the help he got from other adults, a help which helped him to be where he was one day in his life, to be able to do something. So he felt that the best way to contribute to something to our world was also to be a father to the highest number of children. And the school of Nana Kenieba was the best way for him to achieve that objective. Because how many kids went through this school today? Thousands and thousands, who succeeded each in their own way to make their own niche and to cultivate that independence, which was the main value for my father. So therefore, I invite all the graduates of the school to invest themselves in the life of the school, to make sure that this treasure could exist for posterity forever.